My in-laws want to ruin our wedding because of the no children policy by calling everyone to cancel their flights. But they ruined theirs just because of my brother-in-law's cheating girlfriend's son. My fiancé Elijah and I have been together for 5 years and engaged for 10 months. Our wedding is only 7 weeks away, but instead of being a time to prepare for our upcoming ceremony, it's transformed into a battleground. The reason? We requested no children at our wedding. This started last month, during Sunday dinner with Elijah's parents. His mother, Abigail, started asking about seating arrangements, and I mentioned that we had already finalized everything based on our no children policy. She froze mid-bite and exchanged a glance with Elijah's father, Ezra. Ezra put down his fork and asked if we were serious about not allowing children. We both nodded. I explained that we had been clear from the beginning. It was printed on all the invitations we sent out 2 months ago. Abigail began listing reasons why this was unacceptable. She mentioned Elijah's cousin, Grace, who had a 14-month-old son. According to her, Grace had already booked flights for her entire family, including the baby, and hadn't known about our no children rule. I reiterated that this information was clearly stated on the invitation. I also explained our reasons. The venue has a large, unfenced pool, the reception would extend into the night, and alcohol would be freely available. Elijah added that we'd been to weddings where crying babies interrupted the ceremony, and we wanted to avoid that. Ezra's face turned red. He slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. He told us that this wasn't acceptable, and that we should allow him to bring children to the relatives, because they aren't just any strangers, they're family. We told him that wasn't going to change, but he kept insisting. He said if we didn't allow Grace's baby to attend, he and Abigail wouldn't go to the wedding. I looked at Elijah, whose face had gone pale. We immediately excused ourselves and left without finishing dinner. During the drive back, Elijah was furious, saying he couldn't believe his parents were threatening to skip our wedding over this, that they didn't even have young children to care about this wedding policy. For context, my parents are covering most of the wedding expenses, except for the photographer and flowers, which Elijah and I are paying for ourselves. His parents haven't contributed financially despite being financially comfortable. This fact made their demands even more frustrating. Elijah and I always agreed on the no children policy. The venue is really a safety concern. An unfenced pool at a nighttime wedding with adults drinking isn't a good environment for children. But beyond safety, we simply wanted a day where we could celebrate without worrying about the little ones. It's worth mentioning that Elijah's relationship with his parents has always been strained. His older brother, Hunter, is clearly the favorite, while Elijah has been labeled the family disappointment for pursuing a career in graphic design instead of joining the family business. Since they started dating, Elijah has gotten better at dealing with his parents' constant criticism, but this situation was quickly spiraling out of control. The day after the fight, we decided to call Grace directly. Her response surprised us. She had no problem with our no children policy, and had already arranged for her mother-in-law to watch the baby during the wedding. She seemed confused when we mentioned her parents' reaction, and said she hadn't spoken to them about it. We planned to speak with Elijah's parents the next day to clear the air, or rather, to call them liars, which they were. That afternoon, Elijah received a text from his brother, Hunter. They've really messed up, and they'd better fix this. Mom and Dad are calling everyone in the family on Dad's behalf to tell them to cancel their flights and hotel reservations. They were trying to ruin our wedding in every way possible, and they were deeply invested in doing so. Elijah showed me more messages from his brother, where he clearly defended the parents who held him high, while accusing us of it being our fault that my deranged in-laws were sabotaging the wedding. I called my mom and explained everything. She listened quietly, then asked to speak to Elijah. After speaking with both of them, she offered to come with my dad to our meeting with Elijah's parents the next day. At first, I was hesitant. I've always handled my own problems. But my mom said she wanted to be there to share a few truths with that bunch of idiots. The next morning, we met at Elijah's parents' house. Abigail and Ezra acted surprised to see my parents there. Abigail tried to frame the argument as a family matter, but my mom told them to stop being jerks because since they were paying for the wedding, they were going to say something and settle this once and for all. When Elijah mentioned the situation with Grace, his parents denied making any threats about boycotting the wedding or calling relatives. My dad asked them if they were prepared to cover the cost of the ceremony, because if it was ruined, they'd have to pay for even the petals for the centerpieces. Every time Elijah or I tried to talk, his parents would interrupt with disparaging comments or change the subject. After the third interruption, my mom, who is usually in full-on war mode in the middle of the mud-covered jungle, told Abigail to shut up and listened to what her son was trying to tell her. Elijah took the opportunity to explain that we had spoken directly to Grace, who confirmed she had no problem with our policy and had already arranged childcare for the boy. Elijah's parents seemed surprised. They admitted they hadn't actually spoken to Grace about this, but assumed she'd be offended. My dad mentioned the contracts we'd signed with the vendors and hinted at possible legal consequences if they interfered with our guest list. At the end of the meeting, Elijah's parents reluctantly admitted they had overreacted. They agreed not to contact other family members about the idea of skipping the wedding and confirmed they would attend. But Ezra told them that wasn't going to be enough and they should call everyone so they wouldn't cancel their flights and get this sorted. My mother told them in the back that they wouldn't want her showing up at their house again. In the car, Elijah said it was the first time he'd ever seen his parents back down from a demand. My parents assured us they'd help in any way they could if any more problems arose. That night, we received a call from Grace. She had contacted other family members to explain the situation after hearing about the drama. According to her, most of Elijah's relatives thought his parents were being ridiculous and fully supported our decision. We agreed with Elijah that if they even tried to change anything about the wedding, no matter how small, they were out. And if his brother called again to defend them, he was out too. 7 weeks isn't a long time, but it feels like an eternity when you're waiting to see if your in-laws will make another scene. For now, there's peace, but I'm keeping my guard up. Our wedding will happen with or without his approval, and with or without his presence. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the confrontation with Elijah's parents, and I wish I could say everything has calmed down, but that would be far from the truth. Last weekend, we attended a family barbecue at Elijah's uncle's house. Some of his extended family was there, including Grace and her husband, who had traveled to the city. Their baby was with the grandparents. At first, everything seemed fine. Abigail and Ezra were civil, even friendly with my parents, who also attended. I started to think maybe we were over the wedding drama. During dinner, Elijah's aunt mentioned our upcoming wedding, asking about the final preparations. I mentioned our last visit to the wedding venue and how we were finalizing the menu. It was then that Abigail interrupted to announce that she had taken the liberty of making reservations for the rehearsal dinner at a larger venue that could accommodate children. We hadn't even planned to have a rehearsal dinner because the budget was already too much. Abigail went on to explain that she had invited several additional family members, most with young children, to this dinner she had organized without our knowledge or consent. When Elijah asked who would be paying for this dinner, Ezra smugly replied that they would, so they should have a say in who attended. They made it clear that this was their commitment. They would respect our wishes for the ceremony and reception, but they expected us to include the children in the rehearsal dinner they were now organizing. Everyone was watching us, waiting for our reaction, and I didn't want to cause another scene. Elijah thanked his parents for the offer, but said we would need to discuss it privately first. Abigail seemed satisfied with this response, clearly believing we would eventually agree. On the drive home, Elijah was unusually quiet. When we arrived at our apartment, he revealed that his brother, Hunter, had called him earlier that day with an unexpected confession. Apparently, Elijah's parents had never intended to call relatives to boycott the wedding. It had been Hunter's idea to send those threatening messages, hoping to pressure us into changing our minds, because he wanted to bring his new girlfriend's 4-year-old son to the wedding. I was very surprised. Hunter had deliberately escalated the situation to manipulate us, and Elijah's parents either acquiesced or allowed him to act on their behalf. Either way, they had lied to us during our confrontation. The next day, we visited my parents to discuss the rehearsal dinner situation. My dad pointed out that this might be an attempt by Elijah's parents to save face with the family. By organizing an event that included children, they could position themselves as the ones who contributed to the wedding. Plus, they made it public, both so people would know they'd paid for something, and so we couldn't say no. Elijah called his parents that night. He thanked them for the offer of a rehearsal dinner, but explained that we'd already arranged a small gathering with just members of the wedding party at our apartment. After the rehearsal, he suggested they could host a separate family dinner before or after the wedding weekend if they wanted to include extended family. Abigail didn't take this well. She accused Elijah of rejecting her olive branch, and that he was probably listening to me instead of thinking for himself. Elijah immediately stood up for me, reminding his mother that we made decisions together. The call ended with Abigail abruptly hanging up. The next day, we received an email from Ezra, copying several family members, including Hunter and Grace. In it, they announced that they would continue with their dinner as planned and hoped we would reconsider our priorities. They framed our refusal as selfishness and a lack of respect for family traditions. Grace called us immediately after receiving the email. She apologized for being caught in the middle and assured us that she supported whatever decision we made. She also mentioned something interesting. Hunter's new girlfriend, Melissa, had been pushing to be more involved in the wedding plans, apparently making comments about how she could become closer to the family because of this. Elijah drafted a response to his father's email, copying the same people. He politely but firmly clarified that, while we appreciated the gesture, we wouldn't be attending a rehearsal dinner we hadn't planned, but that they were free to have a dinner to celebrate anything else, since we wouldn't be attending. He explained that our wedding weekend was carefully planned, and we couldn't accept any last-minute changes. After sending the email, Elijah received several text messages from family members expressing their support. Even his grandmother called to say she thought his son and daughter-in-law were too stupid. The most surprising support came from Elijah's cousin, who revealed that Ezra and Abigail had pulled similar tricks at their wedding 5 years ago, trying to force him and his wife to invite distant relatives they'd never met. The cousin regretted giving in to his demands and told us to be firm, at least for his sake. Yesterday, Hunter showed up at our apartment unannounced. He wanted to speak with Elijah alone, but Elijah insisted I stay. Hunter admitted to sending the threatening messages, but claimed he was only trying to help resolve the situation. When Elijah pressed him about Melissa's involvement, Hunter said she just wanted to be there and didn't want to attend the wedding without her son. We haven't even met Melissa yet. We only knew that Hunter had responded to her invitation, stating that he would be attending with a date a while back. We told him nothing about the wedding was up for discussion, that it was going to be as planned, and that was the end of it. Hunter left. We've already decided to uninvite Hunter and my in-laws, though indirectly we'll also uninvite Melissa, even though we don't know her. Ezra and Abigail are moving forward with their rehearsal dinner, although we've made it clear we won't be attending and have already informed them they won't be attending the wedding. Several family members have reached out to us, asking for clarification about the events, as they're unsure what information is accurate. Elijah and I have decided to focus on our original plans and ignore the drama as much as possible. My parents have been incredibly supportive, handling some of the communications with vendors to reduce our stress. We've also hired a day of wedding coordinator to handle any issues that may arise during the wedding itself. My in-laws, Hunter and Melissa, can have all the dinner they want with their children. It might even be a rehearsal dinner, but not for our wedding. Update 2. With our wedding just a short drive away, the stress doesn't subside, especially when you have in-laws like mine. Last week, we did the final guest count for the wedding. Several of Elijah's relatives, who had initially confirmed their attendance, changed their responses to, "I'm sorry, I won't be attending." When Elijah called one of his cousins to ask why he wouldn't be attending anymore, he admitted that Abigail had called him, claiming that our venue had changed its policies and now required all guests to pay their own bar tab. After everything that had happened, Elijah's parents were still trying to sabotage our wedding at all costs by spreading misinformation to guests. Elijah immediately sent a message to all his relatives, clarifying that there had been no changes to the venue or details of the reception. Most responded in surprise, having believed Abigail's claims without question. Later that day, we learned that Ezra and Abigail had already moved forward with planning their rehearsal dinner, sending formal invitations to family members that included a line that read, "In celebration of Elijah and Emma's wedding." Several confused family members contacted us, asking if this was an official wedding event they were expected to attend. Elijah was furious. He called his father and demanded they stop presenting his dinner as part of our wedding celebration. After that call, Elijah was silent for almost an hour. When he finally spoke, he suggested we consider getting married in secret. I reminded him of all the people who were truly supportive, my family, our friends, and even some of his relatives who had witnessed his parents' behavior. Plus, everything was paid for. We decided to stick with our original plans, but we took extra precautions. We contacted our wedding venue and vendors to set up passwords to make changes to our arrangements. We also confirmed with our day of coordinator that only Elijah, me, or my parents were authorized to make changes on the wedding day. 2 days ago, Hunter's girlfriend, Melissa, messaged me on social media. She introduced herself and said she wanted to clear some things up, suggesting we meet for coffee. I thought, why would I want to meet with this person I don't even know? But then, I realized that what my in-laws or Hunter said is usually a lie. At the cafeteria, Melissa started by apologizing for any misunderstanding, but quickly changed the subject to explain how hurt Abigail was by our decision to exclude the children. She revealed something I hadn't known. Abigail had been planning to announce at our reception that she and Ezra would be paying for a family vacation to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. The vacation was supposedly scheduled for next summer and would include all family members, including the children. According to Melissa, our no kids policy had ruined this surprise because Abigail felt it sent the wrong message about the importance of family. Now, Abigail was completely reconsidering the vacation plan. Unfortunately, the meeting wasn't about clarifying anything or making herself look good. It was another attempt to manipulate us through guilt. I thanked Melissa for sharing this information, but explained that our wedding decisions were independent of any future family reunions. I also pointed out that if Abigail really wanted to celebrate family, she could have mentioned this vacation plan to us directly instead of using it as leverage. When I told Elahila about the reunion, she wasn't surprised. She suspected her parents might have ulterior motives all along. What did surprise her was learning about this vacation plan, something her parents had never mentioned to her, despite supposedly including it in their plans. Yesterday, we received a call from someone who had attended the rehearsal dinner hosted by Elahila's parents. The rehearsal dinner for a wedding they weren't invited to was strange, to say the least. It wasn't really a rehearsal dinner. It was more of a gathering to talk about us, obviously, badly, and prepare to sabotage our wedding. Luckily, there weren't many people, and there was only one child, Melissa's son, but this person called us because they said there was free food and alcohol, so they weren't going to miss out. We spoke with wedding security and provided them with photos of Elahila's parents, her brother, and Melissa, asking them to be on the lookout for any boycott these revolutionaries might attempt. We also asked my brother to stay close to us during the reception in case any intervention was necessary. We're focusing on the final details and trying to stay positive. Update 3. It's been a month since our wedding day, and I'm finally ready to share what happened and how things are now. The morning of our wedding arrived with perfect weather, which put me in a good mood. The preparations went smoothly, and by the afternoon, I was getting dressed with my bridesmaids, while Elahila was with her groomsmen in another room. An hour before the ceremony, my mom received a call from the venue's security. Elahila's parents had arrived early, and were insisting on seeing Elahila immediately. The security guard followed our instructions to avoid any unexpected confrontations. My mom handled the situation, meeting Abigail and Ezra in the lobby. According to her, they seemed unusually calm. Abigail asked if Elahila was refusing to see them, and my mom explained that he was busy getting ready, but she would ask him if he wanted to see them or if she needed to take care of them herself. They reluctantly agreed to wait. When Elahila went to meet her parents, she brought her best friend with her as support. Ezra was the first to speak, saying they realized they might have crossed some boundaries. He stopped short of offering a full apology, but acknowledged that his behavior had caused tension. Abigail added that she didn't want to miss her son's wedding and promised there would be no further interruptions. Elahila thanked them for their half-hearted apologies, but said the planning was already finalized and no more people were allowed at the wedding. Then he told them he was busy because today was his wedding day, and left. The ceremony went perfectly. We don't know where Elahila's parents went, but as far as we're concerned, they weren't at the wedding. We also didn't hear from Hunter or his fiancée. There were no interruptions during the vows, no objections raised, just the celebration we imagined. At the reception, we arranged the seating so that Elahila's parents sat at a table with my uncle, who works as a mediator and has a calming presence. This ultimately wasn't necessary, because uninviting them solved many of our problems. A week after the wedding, we went on our honeymoon. We decided to completely turn off our phones for the 10 days we would be away, the best decision we could have made. Upon returning, we found numerous messages from family and friends saying how beautiful the wedding had been. Among the messages was a surprising one from Abigail. She began by saying she was deeply hurt by missing her son's wedding and saddened that we had been so mean to them. If only we had accepted her olive branch, this would have all been resolved more easily, and no one would have had to suffer. The message went on, but we deleted it when we realized nothing she said would help us. Hunter hasn't tried to contact us since the wedding. According to Grace, he and Melissa broke up shortly after our reception. Apparently, Hunter found out Melissa got divorced because she had cheated on her ex-husband. So Hunter was no longer interested in Melissa or the children. In other words, a huge scandal and a family ruined by a woman who wasn't even worth it. But it's my in-laws' fault, because if they had stopped him early, when Hunter had this crazy idea of trading up my wedding for a woman he barely knew, then none of this would have happened. Abigail wouldn't have been hurt, and my in-laws would have been at the wedding. Update 4. If you were wondering what happened to the family trip my in-laws had planned, this is the update you've been waiting for. My in-laws went on an anniversary trip, but they didn't pay for the family or bring any children. It was just the two of them and Hunter, oddly enough. I don't think they planned to invite many people, especially given the type of trip they took abroad. It would have cost a lot more than a wedding. I think the initial plan included Melissa and her son, but it never included us or anyone else. From what we know about that trip, my mother-in-law got sick the first day or two and spent the rest of the time vomiting in the bathroom. She only got better at the end, after seeing a doctor who told him she had food poisoning, all because she'd eaten a local dish they weren't used to. And Abigail, having a sensitive stomach, expelled everything inside her, except her sense of entitlement, because when he returned, he told everyone they shouldn't travel to that country. But taking responsibility for eating something poorly cooked, no, and not for trying strange things either, that's someone else's fault. However, that's not my entire update. My parents have decided to sue my in-laws for trying to sabotage the wedding they paid for. They're arguing that my parents had to put themselves through the stress and spend more money than planned because of my in-laws. For example, on security, and since this is a country of lawsuits, my parents think it's a good idea to continue giving him this fame while they sue someone who truly deserves it. I'm not part of this lawsuit, but Hunter tried to convince me to tell my parents not to pursue it. He came to our house and told Alea he wanted to talk to me, but my husband told him he had nothing to talk to me about, to which Hunter replied that he needed to talk to me because his wife, Zora, was causing problems for his parents. Alea pushed him out of the house and closed the door, but Hunter started kicking the garage door. It all ended with a call to the police and a lawsuit against him demanding he pay for the repairs, because it not only caused damage to the structure, but also to the mechanism that lifted it. Now I don't know what will happen to those lawsuits, but they're there, awaiting resolution. Update 5. I now have both lawsuit verdicts. My parents won a lawsuit against my in-laws for $15,000, which covers most of the wedding. I'm glad they were able to recover some of the money they invested in the wedding, and even more so that they got it back through my in-laws, which is the least they deserve. Our lawsuit against Hunter was minor, but he had to pay the $2,000 needed to fix the door. He also received 2 years of probation for his actions. He thought he was making a point with violence, but the judge chose to give him a point.